Anyway, folks, that's it for that. We are going to jump right into our discussion with today's guest, and it is none other than Merlin Miller. He is the president of Americana Pictures. He's been on this program many times. Merlin is one of my favorite people on the planet. In fact, when he came out to visit us a few years ago, and my wife, who has long since tired of my political associations, I told him, I said, no. I told her, I said, no, don't worry. Merlin is different. And she said, you say that about all of them. I said, yeah, but he really is different. He doesn't have an ounce of insanity in him. And to this day, I have been proven right. He doesn't have an ounce of insanity in him. Merlin Miller, come on up.
Hello, Mark. It's good to be back with you.
Well, I have to actually have to amend that. You must have at least an ounce of insanity in you if you agreed to appear on this program, considering what you have just gone through trying to get back into the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Well, you're right. We all have jumped into that snake pit, Mark, and not by design or intent, but I think we're forced as rational patriots to stand up to the reality that surrounds us now. And unfortunately, we are surrounded by snakes, and we have to do something if we want to preserve our freedom and a future for our kids.
Absolutely. Merlin, you called me the other day, and I could tell that you were quite agitated. And you were recounting to me, I think you literally were on your way back from the airport. May be mistaken about that. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And you recounted to me a story that sounded an awful lot like the same treatment that I received back in December when I was traveling from Spokane to Denver. As much as you can without bringing your blood pressure up to a dangerous level, why don't you tell the listeners here what you, as a West Point educated former officer in the U.S. Army, a man who has never been charged or convicted of any crime. He is a citizen in good standing. He loves his country. He is a patriot, and everything on the positive side of the number line. Please tell the folks how you were treated leaving the United States and coming back.
Well, looking back on it now, Mark, it's almost kind of funny. It's so bizarre. But I've been politically incorrect now for quite some time, since I actually met some survivors from the USS Liberty and started researching and exploring their story and connecting dots, which pulled me into this world, a very uncomfortable world of political incorrectness. But I haven't really been bothered. I think because of some of my associations and my background, I've kind of been left alone until recently. I think I'm pushing the envelope in areas which may be getting me a little more attention. But until about, I guess, this last fall, I'd pretty much been off the radar in terms of police state measures. I've been to Iran twice over the last year and a half there before this last trip. No problems whatsoever. Left there, we are not at war with Iran. It's a nation we need to have close relations with. The Iranian people are so much like the American people that we need to have positive relations. We need to be trading. We need to be bridging our cultures and doing everything we can to bring peace to the Middle East instead of more wars. But at any rate, I made those trips, and upon return to the United States, had no problems whatsoever. Went through the normal Homeland Security measures and slid right on through with no problems. Back this last fall, though, I've done a couple of things. I'm starting a new website, merlinmiller.com, with what I call Eagles Blogs, which have only been up now for a couple of months. We've still got some bugs to work out. We're coming under serious hacker attack now, but the whole purpose of this website and my blogs is to come from the perspective of rational patriotism and sharing information with people that they may not have, such that they learn things that are affecting their lives, even though they may not otherwise see this. And we're in process of trying to build an army of people that are aware, that can take actions, whether it's political actions or just informing their neighbors of what's going on, to wake people up so that we do those things to preserve the doctrines of our founding fathers and safeguard our Constitution and Bill of Rights. But that's a lot of backstory there. But by fall, I made a trip actually to a Freedom Conference in Texas. And for the first time, both going there and coming back, I was flagged. And it's almost hilarious because you're randomly selected.
Let me guess, Merlin. Let me guess. SSSS, correct?
Yes, a code, I guess. But whenever you check through any security station whatsoever, you present your boarding pass or your ID, your passport, whatever it might be. All these red lights start going off, and the agent there, and most of these are wonderful people. I mean, they're good people, and they're just trying to do a job. But unfortunately, it's the wrong job. But they say, well, I got to hold up there and see you've been randomly selected. I've got to get my supervisor.
Right, random.
And then the supervisor often has to get their supervisor.
Right.
But anyway, it's a process where then you go through the body scanners, and then they physically search you. They go through all your luggage. They start asking questions. And at any rate, I'm not sure what the odds are, but there's probably 1 in 50 people that were randomly selected, and I just happened to be the person both going to this conference and coming back from this conference. Still, there was no problems, no serious problems. And here this last week and a half, I made a trip, my third trip to Iran. And of course, part of my purpose in going to Iran is beyond just the cultural bridging and trying to do what we can to prevent escalation of conflicts and a new war in the Middle East. But it's also about a project. I've attended some film festivals there. There's a lot of interest in co-production scenarios with American filmmakers. And the story in particular that I think is a great prospect for a co-production is the story of the USS Liberty, but done as a modern-day story, just connecting what happened to that crew in 1967 to what's going on today. And it's a story about a journalist who has to prevent a new false flag from occurring, which would, of course, escalate the war on terror to World War III. So it's an edge-of-your-seat political thriller with love story, and it could actually be filmed in Iran. They have Liberty Hall ships there. They have aircraft. It would be quite a fairly simple process for them to undertake production there. I've only considered this simply because over the last several years, I've done everything in my power to find support in the United States of America to produce this very commercial motion picture which honors our military. And it honors this crew that have been treated horrendously. They were basically treated as derelicts, as bad people for having survived a horrendous betrayal. So it's a remarkable story. But at any rate, I have sought support outside the country here in for the last year and a half, and think there are prospects that this movie could be done. And ironically, it would be something if this film was done in co-production with Iran, since it is a story of patriotism to our servicemen here in America, and it's revealing truths in history in such a way that it not only entertains, but it helps to inform a public as to what's really going on in our country. But at any rate, I think I've elevated the stakes here by pursuing this project. And this last trip I made to Iran, same thing. I go to leave, and when I check in, all the bells and whistles go off, the red lights, and I'm randomly selected again. However, coming back from the state of Iran, it was even taken to a new level. Not only did I have all these bells and whistles, but first of all, coming back, you go through the border, the customs, and about a 45-minute wait doing that. And I had less than a 2-hour layover before catching my flight to come home, and this was last Wednesday. And I went in through that line, and as soon as I got out, then you go through another process line where they marked my card with a huge red C, and of course that indicates, I'm sure, that I'm flagged in some category as a potential terrorist because I'm a patriot questioning what's going on with our foreign policy. But at any rate, the guy that was standing there, I think he had actually been waiting for some time, probably earmarked to wait for me. And then he sent me over to a C line of Homeland Security, TSA. I'm not sure what their title is, but they work under the Homeland Security. I went over to that section then, and there were like 3 black agents, and there was one from the Middle East. His name was a Middle Eastern name. And I thought, well, of course, one of these agents is going to process me. I'll go through more searches, more questions, and whatnot. But no, The short little guy that actually first flagged me and sent me over there came over and said, "He's mine. I'm taking this one." And of course, this real short little guy had a very Russian name and a pedigree, which made me think that this guy is not working for America. He's working for Israel. So at any rate, he proceeded to take over my case, whatever. And for the next about 40 minutes, I was interrogated. Everything was inspected again over and over. And of course, every few minutes he would be talking to me, and then he would go back into an office. And I would be standing there waiting for a few minutes while he was checking whatever it was regarding my passport or visa. They were very concerned that I was even allowed to get back into Iran. So I don't know the internal politics of that, but at any rate, he kept going back and forth. And when I first went to him, or he first started this process, I was made aware. I told him that I had a flight and was going to be leaving pretty soon upstairs. And he said, "No problem. It's right above us. We'll make sure that you get your plane on time. We won't hassle you. You won't be going through that sort of thing." So at any rate, about 30 minutes later, I'm still going through this process. And finally, he comes out of his office. And I said, "Okay, thanks for your cooperation." And then I can pack up all my stuff again and head on. And he keeps talking to me as I'm trying to leave. And I think that he was delaying me some more. But finally, I got away from him, had to go through another security checkpoint, and ran. From the moment I left there, I ran to my gate and got to the gate. And, of course, it was already locked up. The plane had pulled away from its gate. And it was about 10 minutes before the scheduled departure. But they do this now. You know, when they get to a certain stage, they go ahead and when they think they've got their flight full, they pull away and leave a little bit earlier than the actual departure time. But in my opinion, there's no doubt that when he left the little office the last time, that he had gotten off the phone and ensured that plane had locked up and I would miss my flight. Now, of course, that's one thing. But of course, a snowstorm was just hitting D.C. that night. This was the last flight back home to my hometown. So fortunately, I was able to find, an airport agent there that was able to help me get another flight. But of course, not there at that airport. I had to move from Dulles Airport, and this lady helped me to get the ticketed booking for the last flight out of Reagan Airport, which was scheduled to come to my hometown. So I had to beat feet and make it across town to get to Reagan. Hope I could get this seat and get on the plane and try to make it back here before the snowstorm shut down their flights there. Because about half the flights had already been canceled for various destinations, and my hometown hadn't yet. But all the flights for the next day were already being canceled. So, of course, I was very fortunate to find an agent there at the airline desk that helped me, a black lady, a sweetheart, and also a black cab driver that hustled and got me to the other airport. I started the process of check-in. The red lights go off, alarms go off. I've got to get my
random, Marlon. It's all random.
Yeah, and then that supervisor has to get their supervisor. Started through the whole process again, and by then I was a little irate. I started saying, "I've just been through this whole process. I missed my flight in Dulles," and these people started to be a little more accommodating. There wasn't a Russian named commissar waiting for me at Reagan Airport as there was at Dulles. And I was fortunately able to get that flight. It was delayed some, but we got out just before the airport closed. I was able to get home. Of course, it cost me a great deal of money taking that cab across town, and of course the inconvenience to my family picking me up late at night. And of course, it was snowing here, so we had a little bit of a treacherous trek getting back home from the airport here. But it's abuse. This is abuse. An agency which is named Homeland Security is not protecting in any way the American people here. I have the strong feeling that at the top levels of these agencies, they're serving and protecting a foreign state and will do anything they can to harass patriots who are questioning the relationship. As you say, the state of Israel is coming under a lot of scrutiny now. These agencies exist, I think, to dampen that scrutiny. And it's just unfortunate for me to see that our taxpayer dollars are going to this, and we're abusing the rights of our people here in America, and we just can't put up with this. We have to find ways to get rid of the Homeland Security, to get rid of all these agencies that are suppressing our rights and our freedoms in the name of a false war on terror. So it's very concerning to me.
Marlon, you know damned well that Richard Pearl, okay, one of the architects of the war against Iraq, who's been investigated by the FBI several times for espionage on behalf of Israel, do you think that he gets flagged with SSSS when he flies? No. Do you think that Elliot Abrams or Paul Wolfowitz or any of these other guys who also have been investigated by the FBI for espionage on behalf of Israel, do you think that they get flagged? No. They're going to get some hillbilly from Tennessee, pardon my French, Merlin, some hillbilly from Tennessee and some hillbilly from Idaho who don't have two nickels to rub together, who are only using their voice to try to raise the alarm here, no different than Paul Revere did on the night of April 15, 1775. And we get run through this thing as if we were these bloodthirsty killers. But the rest of these guys, you think that they go through this? Absolutely not. No.
Well, and also, these people have never served in our military. They may have served in the Israeli defense forces, but they haven't served in our military. I have family all around me that are serving in the military, had a top secret security clearance. As you say, I've never been arrested, never been in any trouble in my life. But for me to speak up and start as a patriot to say things are not right in our country, we need to look at them. We need to evaluate the facts. We need to do what's right to restore the American Republic. That makes me a criminal of the state in their minds.
All right, so Merlin, this is going to be a very uncomfortable question, but I think that it needs to be asked nonetheless. Is this the end of the line as far as the harassment that people such as you and I and others are getting, or do they plan to escalate this and to make things even more uncomfortable?
Well, I think the end game is here. I think that we need to start taking action. I'm glad to see that Senator Rand Paul is doing something here to put a little pressure on, and we as individuals need to look at what we can do, within our rights to protect our rights, protect our liberties, and we need to stand up and not be afraid to be free Americans. And as Ben Franklin said, those who would give up a little freedom for security deserve neither. And we're at that stage now. We need to prevent America from becoming like Bolshevik Russia, where we are nothing but slaves to be directed around or disposed of.
Well, I would love to share in your optimism, Merlin, but I saw the looks on the people's faces when I was being patted down and frisked and having all my belongings dumped out there for TSA officers to inspect, having my driver's license photographed and all sorts of other things. And I saw the looks on people's faces around me as this was taking place. And, they all had the same look on their face. Who's this guy? What did he do? Why are they pulling him out? Boy, he looks kind of suspicious. He looks a little bit dark in the eyes and dark in the hair. I don't see it happening, Merlin. I mean, I'm sorry, not absent something. I mean, just look at this NSA thing. If we're just going to take this thing at its face value and not read any more into it other than what we've been told by the mainstream media, the American people should be up in arms over this, but they don't care. As long as they've got their football games and their beer and their pornography and all the other distractions that they have, they don't care. Go ahead, listen in on me. See where I go on the internet. I'm not like that guy over there who's getting patted down before getting on the plane, so I don't have to worry about anything.
But Mark, I think there is an element of hope here, and the way I say that is we need to look at this as an opportunity to not feel embarrassed, but to stand up and make issue of this. And I make a point that when I was being interrogated, every one of these stops, when I went to Texas and came back, when I went to Iran this last time and came back, I was talking about the USS Liberty story. In between any laws and questions and conversations, I was explaining what's going on. I was explaining what happened to the crew, why it's important we tell their story. And people are listening. Even the other Homeland Security agents, the TSA agents, they're listening. They got an ear in there. They know what I'm going through. They know it's not right. And maybe they're not in charge of the situation, but they're starting to get concerned. And I'll give you one little note of real positive inspiration. There was one whack Homeland Security agent there that was listening to all this, and quietly, when nobody else could see or hear, he looked at me and he whispered, ADL. And I just nodded at him, ADL.
You're kidding me.
I kid you not.
You mean when you were being subjected to all of this, he more or less passed along some private information, inside information.
He had a confidential communication with me where he was sharing some sympathy and letting me know where this was coming from his perspective, what his opinion on it was.
Wow.
And he's an agent working within the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, don't get me wrong, Merlin. Okay, I don't take the approach that a lot of quote unquote patriots take in this movement that all FBI and Secret Service and DHS, that these are all traitors to America. I don't believe that. I think that these, just like you, when you wore the uniform, when you raised your right hand and you swore an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, you did this because you love your country. And I think that for the most part, that's not that there aren't a few rotten eggs in there, but I think for the most part that these are good people who understand that America is worth saving. It's just that, they have to answer to a higher power. And unfortunately, that higher power has one foot in Tel Aviv. So I agree with you, and I think that it's important that we don't, we don't alienate them, we don't marginalize them, and that's why it is so important. You said at the beginning of the program here when I first brought you up that what you're trying to bring to this discussion is a rational, what you called rational patriotism. I think that's the term that you used. And see, that is what makes you and others like you so problematic. You see, they love the crazies in the movement. They love the ones who, who go off half-cocked and they just spew a bunch of nonsense that makes all of us look crazy. But when you've got somebody such as you, somebody who is credentialed, who has respectability, and all of the rest of that, and you're not going off half-cocked in any kind of, with any kind of racism or extremism or anything like that, and just basically saying, look, folks, we have a problem here. This is our country, and we're going to lose it for good if we don't do something very soon. That is what makes you such a threat, is that you're credible. You see, and this is one of the things that I try to hammer home on this program, is how important it is that we go out and we put on the best images possible. We don't want to come off like a bunch of crazies, because it's, in essence, what we are trying to do here is that we're trying to argue a case in the court of public opinion, and we need to sway that jury in our favor, and we're not going to do that by going into the courtroom and acting like a bunch of crazies.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and the facts are on our side. We just have to be rational and let the facts speak for us.
Now, Merlin, let's switch over, if you can, if you're comfortable discussing it. If not, then just let me know and we won't go there. The movie, how are things developing with this movie being put together?
Well, I'm the eternal optimist, Mark. I've been fighting this now for, the screenplay was written 2.5 years ago. It was ready. So for the last 2.5 years, I've been marketing this project, and I still have faith and belief that it's going to get made. Whether it gets made according to my schedule, I don't know. I really want this made in the worst way this year. I think it's critically important that it get made this year, so it's out and released no later than next spring, because I think it's critical to the world situation right now. It may not happen by my schedule, but I'm not giving up. There are prospects. I am working those prospects, and I'm more optimistic now than I've ever been. But I've been there at the gate and know that I'm so close, and all of a sudden it falls apart. So that's the nature of the beast that I'm dealing with. But I am an optimist, and I do think that we got to keep trying.
Oh, I agree. Listen, even with this terrible blow that we have all been dealt this last week with a good friend of ours losing his job, and what kind of bind that this has put all of us in now to try and to make up the deficit for him. We do have to keep moving ahead. I mean, what else can we do? What else can we do? Do we just lay down and let the vampire sink his fangs into our neck? I get this from a lot of people, and they say, well, you're fighting this monster here, and you know, the way I look at it, Merlin, it's like being thrown into falling into the water that's full of alligators. And, you know, so what chance do you have against these alligators? Well, not much, you know, but I think that it is your duty to do everything you can to fight. Okay, you're not going to pull the teeth out of the thing's mouth, but up until that last bite when he takes you down, you know, I think it's important to just to not surrender to him and to fight as much as you can. You know, I mean, there have been lots of times where it looked like, well, like the USS Liberty. By all appearances, it was a done deal that day. They couldn't fight back. They lost their radio transmission within the first 15 seconds of the attack. They stood no chance of coming out of that thing alive, and yet they did. You know, you read the Phil Turney story about them patching up the holes in the ship. Fascinating account of them doing everything they could just to stay afloat. And, you know, what people will walk away from after reading that book is how literally the entire world was saved that day. Because if the Liberty had gone down, those F-4 Phantoms would have dropped their nuclear payloads on Egypt that was aligned with the USSR at that time. Okay. So I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, Merlin, but I think actually I'm glad I'm glad for several reasons to have you on today, but not the least of which is that you've kind of lifted my spirits a bit with your encouragement. I think that was a nice, and it was exactly what the doctor ordered. So Merlin, we're approaching the hour here. What would you like to tell the folks before we say sayonara?
Well, we're at the beginning of a great awakening, Mark. I really believe that America is starting to wake up, and it may happen very quickly. Once it starts, the tide turns, we may see a radical change to what's going on in our country for the better, a very positive change. And I think the Liberty story, I'm going to keep doing what I can to try to get that story made, do what I can politically to try to get our country back on track as a republic. But the USS Liberty story, the false flag motion picture, is key. I know, and it's an Achilles heel for those people that are subjecting us to what we're going through. Just as I mentioned the Texas trip, Phil Turney, who you talked about, he was the keynote speaker there. That's when these hassles again began, and it's a very concerning story that they do not want told.
Oh, no, it is the silver bullet, Merlin. There's no question about it, because it's not a theory that Israel, okay, at this point, we can say it's a theory even though we know it's a fact that Israel was involved in 9/11. It is not a theory that Israel attacked that ship. And, you know, it's, you're right, that is the linchpin. You pull that thing and the entire thing is going to fall apart. And, you know, this is something that you and I discussed when you came out here. You know, I said, Merlin, you sure you want to do this? Because, you know, as far as dangerous information goes, there is nothing more dangerous to this gang of thieves, this brood of vipers, than the USS Liberty story. Hands down, nothing more dangerous to them.
Well, the American people are very accommodating people. We're generally good people. And when we find out that we've been deceived, we've been used, and our dander gets up, watch out. And America's at that stage right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, on that note, Merlin, I'm going to go in and I'm going to, I'm actually going to start rereading that book that I helped Phil Turney with. And I, as always, am eternally grateful for not just you coming on the program, but for everything you do. You are a very positive force, a guiding light for all of us. And just keep plugging along. One of these days, we're going to roll the dice, and they're going to come up, I guess, sixes. I don't know. I've never gambled like that before. I don't know. What is the lucky thing when 2 sixes come up?
Gosh, I don't know. I'll take snake eyes at this stage.
Yeah, see, you have to have money to actually gamble, and since I don't have any, that's why I don't gamble. So anyway, Merlin, my best to you and to all your work. You are a blessing to all of us, and a true patriot, a true American. Listening to people like you gives me a lot of hope that maybe what I'm doing isn't just a complete waste of time.
It's not, Mark. Keep up the great job.
All right. You take care, Merlin.
Thank you. You too.
All right, folks. That was the one and only Merlin Miller. Please visit his – no, you can't visit his website, folks, because they have hacked it. merlinmiller.com. I just tried going on there, and sure enough, my antivirus program said, no, you don't want to go here. So, and folks, this really is a lesson in and of itself as to, why we are such pains in the asses on this program about appearances, how important it is. We have too many people in this movement who say, oh, screw it, I'm just going to say whatever I feel like saying, and I don't care what happens. No, you've got to care, okay? It is a war of perception, okay? Control of perception is 99% of the battle. If you go out there and you act like an idiot in front of that court of public opinion, you're going to lose, okay? You may get an A for bravery. You may get an A for having big testicles, but you're going to lose the battle. You're going to lose the war. And that is why it is so important that we spit shine our shoes. We make sure that our suit is pressed. We make sure our hair is combed. We've taken a shower. We've brushed our teeth. We've done all of that stuff so that we can go walking into court very confidently with plenty of self-respect, confidence, and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is why you should listen to me. You should believe my side of the story, and why you should not believe what my opponent is saying. We need to root these people out, the ones who are going out there and they are